At first glance, it might look familiar, a delicate structure catching the light. You might think of a bird, perhaps a peacock showing off its iridescent train. But this single fossilized feather is a clue to a story far grander and far older than you can possibly imagine. It's a key that unlocks a completely different version of our planet's ancient past. Because for over a century, our collective imagination has been dominated by a very different image. Close your eyes and picture a dinosaur. What do you see? Chances are, it's a towering, monstrous creature. A cold-blooded, scaly beast with skin like an alligator or a lizard. This is the dinosaur we grew up with, the one immortalized in classic illustrations and cemented in our minds by cinematic giants roaring across the silver screen. It's an image of raw, reptilian power. We've pictured the undisputed king, Tyrannosaurus Rex, as a hulking brute with tough, leathery hide. We've envisioned the cunning velociraptor as a pack-hunting lizard, its scales glistening under a prehistoric sun. Even herbivores like the formidable Triceratops are almost always depicted as giant reptilian tanks. This vision of a drab, scaly world became scientific dogma, a picture of the past set in stone. But science is a journey of constant discovery, and sometimes a single revolutionary piece of evidence can shatter even our most deeply held beliefs. What if that entire picture, so carefully constructed over generations, was fundamentally flawed? What if the monsters of our childhood dreams never really existed as we imagined them? What if, instead of tough, leathery skin, many of these incredible animals were adorned with plumage? Not just the small ones, but potentially even the giants. What if the reality of the Mesozoic era was far softer, more complex, and infinitely more colorful than we ever dared to believe? This isn't just wild speculation. Over the past few decades, a tidal wave of fossil evidence has emerged, particularly from the fossil beds of China. These exquisitely preserved specimens are rewriting the textbooks in real time. The evidence is no longer just suggestive, it's overwhelming, and it's forcing a complete re-evaluation of what it meant to be a dinosaur. The truth that is emerging is of a world far more vibrant and varied than the gray and green wasteland of old illustrations. It was a world filled with creatures sporting everything from simple, hair-like filaments for insulation to complex veined feathers for display. Thanks to the discovery of fossilized pigment cells called melanosomes, we're even beginning to reconstruct their true colors, patterns of iridescent black, reddish-brown, and stark white. This is the story of that scientific revolution. It's a detective story, pieced together from fragments of bone and impressions in stone. It's the story of how a handful of groundbreaking discoveries didn't just put feathers on dinosaurs. They revealed one of the most profound evolutionary connections in the history of life on Earth. They built a bridge across 66 million years of extinction, connecting the colossal giants of the past to the familiar birds right outside your window. The dinosaurs never truly vanished. They just learned to fly. When you picture a dinosaur, what do you see? For most of us, it's a towering, scaly creature, something like a monstrous lizard. This image is so ingrained in our culture, from movies to museum models, that it feels like fact. But where did this scaly assumption actually come from? To find the answer, we have to travel back in time, not to the Mesozoic, but to 19th century England. The story begins as naturalists in Victorian England were unearthing colossal bones, fossils unlike anything seen before. In 1842, the brilliant anatomist Sir Richard Owen examined these finds. He recognized they belonged to a unique group of animals, and he coined a new name for them, Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizard. That very name framed the entire perception. These were the remains of ancient, monstrous reptiles. Owen and his contemporaries were working with limited information. The evolutionary link between dinosaurs and birds was completely unknown. So they turned to the closest living analogs they could find, crocodiles and iguanas. Looking at the skeletons, they saw similarities in the skulls and limb structures. Based on this anatomical evidence, they concluded that dinosaurs must have shared other reptilian traits, including their skin. It was the most logical conclusion based on the evidence they had. This reptile model quickly became scientific dogma, shaping both academic papers and the public's imagination. The first ever dinosaur sculptures at London's Crystal Palace, depicted them as sluggish, sprawling, scaly behemoths. For over a century, this image was reinforced in books and illustrations. Dinosaurs were classified as reptiles, and therefore, they were imagined with scales. It was a powerful feedback loop of assumption and depiction. But there was a huge problem at the heart of this consensus. The fossil record is overwhelmingly biased towards hard parts like bones. Soft tissues, skin, muscle, feathers, decay quickly and only fossilize under exceptionally rare circumstances. Paleontologists were building a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. They had the skeletal frame, but the outer covering was a blank canvas. In the absence of direct evidence, they fell back on their initial classification. If dinosaurs were reptiles, they must have had reptilian skin. This educated guess slowly hardened into accepted fact. But science is a self-correcting process, and deep within the fine-grained stone of a Chinese quarry, a series of discoveries were about to be unearthed that would not just challenge this century-old assumption, but prove it spectacularly and beautifully wrong. The revolution that would forever change our image of dinosaurs began not in a lab, but in the quiet hills of northeastern China. In the mid-1990s, the Liaoning province was a paleontological hotspot, but no one was prepared for what was about to be unearthed. The secret to Liaoning's magic lies in its violent past. 120 million years ago, this was a land of lakes and active volcanoes. Eruptions blanketed the landscape in fine ash, rapidly burying creatures in the soft lakebed sediment. This oxygen-starved environment acted as a perfect time capsule, halting decay and preserving not just bones, but the ghostly imprints of skin, organs, and other soft tissues. Then, in 1996, a local farmer split open a slab of shale and found something remarkable. The fossil was acquired by scientists, and as they began preparing it, they knew they had a beautifully preserved small dinosaur. But there was something else, something unexpected. It was a small, turkey-sized dinosaur called Sinosauropteryx. A nimble predator, it likely scurried through the undergrowth. But its anatomy wasn't the part that would make history. Running along its back and down its long, slender tail was a faint, fuzzy halo. At first, some wondered if it was frayed skin fibers. But under the microscope, it wasn't scales. It was the clear impression of a primitive, feathery covering. These weren't the complex feathers of a modern eagle. They were simple, hair-like filaments, what scientists call proto-feathers. Their purpose was almost certainly insulation, a downy coat to keep the small, warm-blooded dinosaur from losing body heat. This was the long-sought smoking gun. The evidence was undeniable. This reptile had plumage. The discovery of Sinosauropteryx opened the floodgates. A fossil gold rush began in Liaoning as scientists and collectors descended on the region, unearthing treasure after treasure. Soon, dozens of other feathered dinosaurs emerged. We found dinosaurs like Caudipteryx, with vanned feathers on its arms and tail, but unable to fly. Then came Microraptor, a small predator with 4 wings, using long flight feathers on both its arms and legs to glide between trees. We also found dinosaurs with ornate feathers clearly used for display, just as modern birds use plumage for courtship. Incredibly, by examining microscopic pigment sacs preserved in the fossils, scientists could even reconstruct their life colors. We now know Sinosauropteryx had a reddish-brown coat and a striking striped tail. The Liaoning Revolution proved that the first feather discovery wasn't an anomaly. It was the new rule. The line between bird and non-avian dinosaur had been completely and irrevocably blurred. This discovery completely reimagined the dinosaur world. The velociraptor from Jurassic Park was a sleek, scaly reptile. The real velociraptor, a 6-foot-tall predator covered in feathers, likely with a full set of wings on its arms. It wasn't a reptile anymore. It looked like a terrifying, flightless bird. The feathers weren't just for show. They served many purposes. For smaller dinosaurs, a feathery coat would have provided insulation, allowing them to regulate their body temperature just like modern birds. This suggests many dinosaurs were warm-blooded, not cold-blooded like reptiles. For others, the vibrant colors and complex patterns on their feathers were crucial for mating displays, a visual signal of health and fitness. For a velociraptor, its arm feathers might have provided extra control while running, or a terrifying visual display to intimidate rivals. But what about the king, the T-Rex? Could the most terrifying predator in history have been fluffy? The answer is a bit more complicated. While no T-Rex fossils have been found with direct feather impressions, we have a very strong piece of indirect evidence. We found a relative of the T-Rex called Yutyrannus in China. At over 30 feet long, it was a colossal predator, and its fossils show clear evidence of a feathery coat. As a close cousin, this makes it highly probable that the mighty T-Rex was at least partially feathered, especially as a juvenile, or perhaps with a downy covering on its back for insulation. A fully feathered T-Rex is unlikely, but a mix of scales and feathers is now the most accepted theory. So, the great lizards of the past were actually the first step in a family tree that still sings to us from the treetops today. The discovery of feathered dinosaurs is more than just a cool fact. It's a profound shift in our understanding of life itself. It shows us that evolution isn't always a straight line, and that our view of the past is constantly being rewritten with every new discovery. This is what science is all about. Not just memorizing facts, but a relentless journey of discovery. What's the most surprising fact about dinosaurs you've ever learned? Let us know in the comments below. And be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell for more amazing deep dives.